If you don't think that my life is in mortal danger because of what I'm teaching, then you're not paying attention to what I'm teaching. Nonetheless, those who know the truth must teach the truth, even in the face of death. Our ancestors demands this of us. This is why Malcolm kept speaking. It's why Martin kept speaking. And it's why Biko kept speaking up until their assassinations. Those who know the truth must teach. African proverb. Black people, it's time to stop believing in things that literally insults our own intelligence. Moreover, when we assign an urban myth to our real life oppression and condition, we are making damn fools of ourselves. It's time to wake up and see our reality. The cause of our collective condition has never been the result of a silly slave syndrome myth. That silly myth presents what would in fact be the least plausible scenario used for controlling generations of people. It's a belief that's believed by those who are ignorant. Because whenever people are ignorant, they'll always believe nonsense. Because that's not how true brainwashing works. The true way of how white oppressive forces manipulated millions of black people to perceive ourselves as being our own worst enemies and to be self-loathing was by making us forget that it's actually our oppressors that are controlling everything that we believe about ourselves. A fact that has remained consistent throughout history is that the oppressor's depiction of the oppressed has never been a true one. It's always negatively distorted to demoralize, divide, and make the oppressed self-loathing. Keeping the oppressed within this condition makes the oppressed easier to control and prevents the oppressed from unifying against their oppressors. Not all wars are fought on the battlefield. Most are fought in the mind. There are presently white men that specialize in psychiatry and propaganda that works unrelentingly behind the scenes, manipulating the collective minds of the black masses. These men govern our minds, molds our opinions, and shapes our perception in ways that protects and serves the interests of the white society. Through the skillful, sustained use of repetitive psychological warfare propaganda campaigns, these men have created a psychological prison for the collective minds of millions of black people. Those black people that do not critically think never notices their mental change. And as Noam Chomsky said, the general population doesn't know what's happening, and it doesn't even know it doesn't know. Noam Chomsky is a renowned activist and has been speaking on this subject for many decades. He said that given the legacy of black enslavement and subjugation by the white society, that there's a fear that the black victims might rise up and take revenge against the white society. He said that the white society is deeply imbued with fears that Africans throughout the diaspora will someday repay the violence and oppression that has marred our history by the white society. This immense fear resulted in the white society deploying psychological warfare propaganda campaigns that manipulate the black population in ways that prevents that retribution from manifesting. The white media's unrelenting negative depiction of black people that amplifies the negative to the point that it distorts our reality is much more than just biased media reporting. It's actually an insidious black racially demoralizing divide and rule, or divide and conquer also, psychological warfare campaign. Demoralize, divide and rule, or demoralize, divide and conquer, is a method of maintaining control over a targeted population through constant and unrelenting demoralization in order to create self-hate and division between them. It's a well-documented and well-proven social science tactic that's used for controlling targeted populations. Whenever those in power wants to brainwash a targeted population to think and behave in ways that they want them to do, they always heavily demoralize them. This divides them, makes them self-loathing, and makes them much more easier to control. This is precisely the psychological warfare campaign that white oppressive forces presently deploys against the black population. This psychological warfare system is deployed like a massive media marketing campaign that constantly subjects Black people to receiving only the fraudulent worst narratives about ourselves. Within this system, fraudulent Black racially demoralizing propaganda is being pumped unrelentingly into the unsuspecting minds of the Black population without being challenged nor counterbalanced by an equal amount of Black positive racially affirming information. It conveys the subliminal message that Black people are now our own worst enemies, and therefore we need whites to govern over our lives. Moreover, that Black people should admire, respect, and trust only whites. This system is extremely effective because when Black people are repetitively presented these noted narratives from trusted white media sources, it can be very difficult to resist its implied propaganda programming, especially when the propaganda is being told daily and so unrelentingly. Its weapon is the demoralizing messages that it carries and the way that it adversely affects Black populations in terms of our behavior. No group can be constantly inundated with negative messages about themselves and not be adversely affected. The basis of this concept of warfare works by affecting the subconscious minds of Black people through demoralizing propaganda. It works by tapping into the immense power that shame has upon the human mind. With time being unable to refute the constant negative information about ourselves, many Black people eventually comes to accept it. The constant taunting of negative propaganda unconsciously influence how the Black population perceives ourselves collectively, thus creating division and self-hatred among the Black population. It also shifts Black collective aggressions away from the white society and redirected towards ourselves. The ultimate goal is to demoralize Black people to such an extent that we begin to doubt our own ability to govern ourselves and believe that we therefore need white people to govern over our lives. Moreover, that we're better off living under white dominance, and therefore we abandon all hopes of ever liberating ourselves. It also creates Black self-hatred and disunity, which attacks the core foundation of what bonds us as a people, and we can then be ruled over forever. If you doubt that this is what's being done to Black people by white oppressive forces, it's because you're not critically thinking. Because it's in fact so clearly and obvious that this is what's being done to Black people, that it's only by not critically thinking that it cannot be seen. Because when critically thinking, it becomes clear to see just how cartoonishly unrealistic it actually is, that virtually all information that we receive from the white society about us are consistently negative and Black racially demoralizing. It's a Black racially demoralizing divide and rule psychological warfare propaganda campaign. This is all possible because people are like computers. All you have to do is keep giving them certain information every so often, and you can persuade an entire generation of people towards an implied objective. It doesn't matter if the information presented is untrue. Most Black people will act upon it because they have all been given the same disinformation about ourselves. This psychological warfare system provides white oppressive forces with a more proficient method used for controlling Black populations. For unlike the past blatant racist systems that Black people were easily able to identify and therefore develop counter strategies against, this system is not easily recognized, nor is it easily comprehended by many of its Black victims. White racism always prevails best when the Black victim don't recognize it. This psychological warfare propaganda works so well, in fact, that it not only makes Black people more compliant with white dominance over our lives, it in many cases causes Black people to even prefer it. It's the reason why many Black people are now self-loathing, perceive ourselves as our own worst enemies, and revere as Caucasian in spite of a brutal history to the contrary. It's always by deliberate design when the oppressed are thinking exactly as how their oppressors wants them to think. Black people, given our history shared with the white society, we must always question the validity of all information that we receive from the white society. The oppressor's depiction of the oppressed is never a true one. It's always falsely negatively distorted to serve the oppressor's hidden nefarious agendas. This has been a fact throughout history and is still consistent now. And is especially true when these oppressors are history's most notoriously deceitful, narcissistic, and racist group. Sadly, to our own detriment, the oppressed will always believe the frauds and worse about themselves. Whenever our oppressors are controlling the information that we receive, they will always negatively distort it to manipulate our minds to think in ways that serve their society. It's the people they are, it's the way they've always been, and it's the only way they know how to be. It is time that we wake up to our reality. Because if our understanding remains flawed, then all of our remedies and strategies that stems from those false understandings will also be flawed. This is why we must learn the truth so we can develop the proper counter strategies. Once you understand what's being done to us, their lies start to lose its effect. You look at your people differently because you stop listening to the oppressor's lies, because it is believing the oppressor's lies that give them their power over us. But when you learn the system, it loses its effect. It's time to wake up to our reality. Please, I ask you to share my videos. We gotta get the information out. You can also order my book at www.theblackpeoplesmatrix.com. One love and peace, brothers and sisters.